Say hello, bud. Enjoy your pizza.
A simple pizza delivery on a quiet Saturday night turned into something far more unexpected. A brief encounter between a toddler and the delivery man led to a moment that no one could have anticipated. But what happened after that hug left everyone speechless. Stay tuned to uncover the heartwarming twist that changed everything. Before we get into this emotional journey, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe. Your support helps us continue sharing these incredible moments that touch the heart. It was a typical Saturday evening in West Warwick, Rhode Island, and the Sheely family had already settled into their weekend routine. It had been an unusually hectic week for Lindsay Sheely, the mother of two. Juggling between work, household chores, and keeping up with her energetic 2-year-old son Cohen had drained her. As much as she loved cooking, tonight felt like a well-deserved night off. She smiled at the idea of ordering pizza, an easy treat for the family that Cohen especially loved. Cohen was always excited when pizza was ordered. The anticipation made him jump around the living room, his bright eyes constantly darting to the front window in hopes of seeing the pizza delivery car. It was one of those small things that always brought joy to his little heart. For Cohen, the pizza wasn't just food, it was an event. The doorbell ringing, the smell of hot cheese and dough, and the boxes stacked in front of him. It was all part of the excitement. As Lindsay placed the order online, she noticed Cohen pacing near the front door. "Not yet, buddy," she called to him with a gentle laugh. She knew exactly what he was doing, waiting for that moment when the delivery car would pull into the driveway, signaling that pizza time had finally arrived. As the minutes ticked by, Cohen's excitement only grew. He asked again, "Pizza here yet, Mommy?" "Almost, sweetie. Any minute now," Lindsay assured him as she cleaned up the kitchen and glanced at her phone to check the status of the delivery. At last, the doorbell rang and Cohen's tiny feet raced across the floor toward the front door. Lindsay was about to call him back and grab the pizza herself, but Cohen had already yanked the door open before she could stop him. Standing there on the porch was a man, maybe in his early 40s, wearing a jacket emblazoned with the pizza place's logo. He looked tired, and his face was framed by a beard that had started to show some gray. Lindsay could tell that this was not his first delivery of the night. But even through his exhaustion, he managed to give Cohen a warm smile. "Hey, little man," the delivery man said with a grin as he balanced the pizza boxes in one hand and handed them to Lindsay. "Enjoy your pizza." Before the man could turn to leave, Cohen, always the affectionate little boy, did something that would become the start of a story neither Lindsay nor the delivery man could have anticipated. Cohen, without saying a word, ran up to the delivery man with his arms outstretched and gave him a hug. It wasn't the kind of half-hearted hug a child gives when asked to be polite. It was a real heartfelt hug, a hug full of joy and warmth. Lindsay stood there for a moment, her heart swelling with pride and surprise as she watched her son wrap his little arms around this stranger's legs. The man froze for a moment, clearly caught off guard by the unexpected gesture, but then after what seemed like a brief hesitation, he crouched down to Cohen's level and returned the hug, his face softening into an expression of gratitude. "Aw, thank you, buddy," the man said as he gently patted Cohen on the back. "That was the best part of my night," Lindsay smiled, touched by the interaction, but quickly reminded Cohen to not overwhelm the man. "No kisses, Cohen, just blow kisses, okay?" she said gently, knowing her son's tendency to overdo his affections. Cohen giggled and, obeying his mom's request, blew a few air kisses toward the delivery man. The man stood back up, now looking more animated than when he had first arrived. "Thanks again, little guy," he said, his voice carrying a warmth that hadn't been there moments earlier. "You have a good night." As the delivery man walked back to his car, Lindsay waved goodbye and closed the door, balancing the pizza boxes in one hand and guiding Cohen back inside with the other. It had been a sweet and simple interaction, one that Lindsay assumed would be a pleasant memory for her little family and perhaps for the delivery man as well. But that would have been the end of the story, just a cute moment between a child and a stranger, if it weren't for what would happen next. That night, after they had finished dinner and Cohen had finally settled down for bed, Lindsay found herself replaying the moment in her mind. Cohen had always been an affectionate child, but something about that hug had struck her differently. It had been so pure, so spontaneous. There was no reason for it other than the fact that Cohen had wanted to share a moment of kindness. Lindsay couldn't help but smile as she recalled the delivery man's reaction. Feeling like it was a story worth sharing, Lindsay decided to checked the footage from their home's doorbell camera. It had captured the entire exchange. Cohen running out to hug the delivery man, the man's surprised but grateful response, and the smiles that followed. It was heartwarming to see it play out again on the screen. Without thinking much about it, Lindsay uploaded the video to her Facebook page. "We thought it was so sweet and funny," she wrote in the caption. "I hope it gives you a laugh and warms your heart like it did for us." Within hours, the video started gaining attention. Friends and family commented on how adorable Cohen was and how sweet the moment had been. But Lindsay wasn't prepared. For what? What would happen the next day? It started with a private message in her inbox. It was from someone she didn't recognize at first, Ryan Catterson, the delivery man from the night before. The message began with a simple, "Thank you for sharing the video." But as Lindsay read on, she realized there was much more to the story than she had anticipated. Ryan explained that the previous few weeks had been some of the hardest of his life. His 16-year-old daughter, Alyssa, had passed away unexpectedly, and he had been struggling to cope with the loss. Ryan had taken on extra shifts delivering pizzas as a way to keep himself busy, to distract himself from the overwhelming grief that threatened to consume him every day. But despite his best efforts to stay strong, there were moments when the weight of the tragedy felt unbearable. The night before, when Ryan had delivered the pizza to Lindsay's house, he had been in one of those dark moments. He had been running on autopilot, going through the motions of his job, trying not to think too much about the emptiness he felt inside. And then Cohen ran up to him with his arms open wide, offering him a hug. "That hug," Ryan wrote, "was the first real comfort I've felt since Alyssa passed. It was like, for just a moment, the world wasn't so heavy anymore." Lindsay read the message with tears in her eyes. She couldn't believe what she was reading. The simple hug that Cohen had given to a stranger, something that had seemed so small at the time, had meant the world to this man who was grieving the loss of his child. Ryan went on to explain that Alyssa's passing had been sudden and devastating. She had been a vibrant, full-of-life teenager with dreams and ambitions. Losing her had left a hole in his heart that he didn't know how to fill. He shared with Lindsay that his family had set up a GoFundMe page to help cover the costs of Alyssa's funeral, as the unexpected nature of her death had left them struggling financially. He hadn't meant to ask for help, but he wanted Lindsay to understand just how much Cohen's hug had impacted him in the midst of such an overwhelming loss. Lindsay was speechless. She couldn't believe that something as simple as a hug had reached this man at a time when he needed it most. She felt compelled to do something, anything, to help Ryan and his family. She immediately updated her Facebook post, sharing Ryan's story with her friends and followers. "Little did we know what Cohen's hug to this stranger would mean," Lindsay wrote in her updated post. "Ryan recently lost his daughter, Alyssa, and that hug from Cohen was a little blessing from God." She also included the link to the GoFundMe page, writing, "My heart is so heavy for this family. Anything to help lighten the burden will be greatly appreciated." Within hours, the post went viral. People from all over the world began sharing the video, commenting on the power of small acts of kindness, and donating to Alyssa's GoFundMe page. Messages of support flooded Ryan's inbox, and within days the campaign had surpassed its original goal, ensuring that Alyssa's funeral expenses were covered. Lindsay was overwhelmed by the response. What had started as a simple moment between her son and a delivery man had grown into something so much bigger, a story of hope, compassion, and the unexpected ways that we can touch each other's lives. For Ryan, the outpouring of love and support was both humbling and healing. He would never stop grieving the loss of his daughter, but knowing that there were people out there who cared, who were willing to help him through his darkest days, gave him the strength to keep going. And Cohen's hug, that small act of love, would remain etched in his heart forever as a reminder that even in the midst of overwhelming pain, there is still kindness, still light. As the weeks went by, Lindsay and Ryan stayed in touch. They shared messages of support, and Lindsay continued to follow Ryan's journey through grief. She checked in on him often, offering words of encouragement and letting him know that Cohen was still thinking of him. Meanwhile, Cohen, blissfully unaware of the impact he had made, went on being the same joyful, affectionate little boy he had always been. To him, the hug had been nothing out of the ordinary. It was just what he did. He loved people. and he loved showing that love through hugs and kisses. But to Ryan, that hug had been a lifeline, a moment of grace in the midst of unimaginable sorrow. Months later, Lindsay received another message from Ryan. He wanted to thank her again for everything she had done, for sharing the story, for connecting him with so many people who had offered their support. But most of all, he wanted to thank her for Cohen. He explained that while the grief of losing Alyssa would never go away, he had started to find moments of peace. He had taken some time off work to be with his family, to heal, and to honor Alyssa's memory in the best way he could. And through it all, he had held on to the memory of Cohen's hug, a small but powerful reminder that love still existed, even in the darkest of times. For Lindsay, the experience had been a reminder of the profound impact that we can have on others even when we don't realize it. It was a lesson in the power of human connection and the ways in which small moments can change lives in ways we could never predict. Through a simple act of love, Cohen had given Ryan the hope he needed to carry on, and that, more than anything, was the true beauty of the story. The bond between Ryan and Cohen, though brief, had left a lasting mark. What started as an ordinary pizza delivery on a Saturday night had grown into a story of compassion and healing, a reminder that even the smallest acts of kindness can have the biggest impact. As time passed, the ripple effects of Cohen's simple hug continued to grow in ways Lindsay couldn't have foreseen. After the video had gone viral, their small Rhode Island town found itself at the center of national attention. News stations, both local and national, picked up the heartwarming story. Reporters reached out to Lindsay, asking for interviews and wanting to know more about the little boy who, in his innocence, had managed to heal a broken-hearted man. The media attention was overwhelming at first. Lindsay had never expected so much interest in a simple act of kindness. But as more people reached out to express their own stories of loss and how the hug had touched them, she realized how much the world needed stories like this, stories that reminded people of the goodness in humanity, of the small acts that can change lives. Cohen, of course, was blissfully unaware of all the attention. At just 2 years old, he didn't understand what had happened or why people were so interested in the video of his hug. All he knew was that he had made a new friend in Ryan, and he talked about him often. "Mommy, where's Mr. Ryan?" he would ask, as if expecting the pizza man to come back at any moment. Lindsay tried to explain to him in simple terms, "Mr. Ryan is with his family right now, sweetie, but I'm sure we'll see him again soon." And indeed, they did. Several weeks after the initial wave of media attention, Ryan reached out to Lindsay again. This time, he had a special request. After hearing the outpouring of support from strangers all over the world and receiving donations through the GoFundMe page for Alyssa's funeral, Ryan wanted to personally thank Lindsay and Cohen. But more than that, he wanted to bring something special to Cohen. Ryan explained in his message that the hug Cohen had given him was something he wanted to reciprocate in some way. Alyssa had loved animals, and Ryan had found solace in helping at local animal shelters in the months following her passing. In her memory, he had adopted a puppy, a small golden retriever that Alyssa had always dreamed of having. While the dog was a source of comfort for Ryan, he thought about how much Cohen had brought comfort to him. So one Saturday morning, just a few weeks after their initial meeting, Ryan pulled into the Sheely family's driveway, this time not as a pizza delivery driver, but as a friend. As Lindsay watched from the kitchen window, she saw Ryan step out of the car holding a small puppy with golden fur, its floppy ears and wagging tail barely able to contain the energy within. Cohen, who had been playing with his toy cars in the living room, spotted Ryan through the window and squealed in excitement. "Mr. Ryan! Mr. Ryan!" he shouted, running to the door as fast as his little legs could carry him. Lindsay opened the door, and Cohen practically leaped into Ryan's arms. But this time, Ryan wasn't alone. As Cohen clung to Ryan, the puppy wiggled in his arms, eager to meet the little boy. "Cohen, I brought a special friend with me today," Ryan said, kneeling down to Cohen's level. He gently set the puppy on the ground, and it immediately scampered over to Cohen, its little tail wagging furiously. Cohen's eyes grew wide with excitement as the puppy licked his face, its tiny tongue tickling him and making him giggle uncontrollably. The sight of Cohen laughing with the puppy brought tears to Lindsay's eyes. It was such a pure, joyful moment, and she could see how much it meant to Ryan too. For the first time since they had met, Ryan seemed lighter, as if the weight of his grief had lifted just a little. This is Sunshine, Ryan said, watching as Cohen and the puppy played together on the porch. Alyssa always wanted a golden retriever, and I thought that maybe, in a way, she could bring some sunshine to your family, too. Lindsay was speechless. She knelt down beside Cohen and the puppy, her hand resting gently on the dog's soft fur. "Ryan, this is too much. You didn't have to do this." But Ryan shook his head. "I wanted to. Cohen gave me something that I can never repay, a moment of peace when I needed it most. This is just my way of saying thank you." Tears welled up in Lindsay's eyes as she hugged Ryan. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice thick with emotion. From that day forward, Sunshine became a beloved member of the Sheely family. Cohen and the puppy were inseparable, their bond growing stronger with each passing day. Sunshine brought endless joy to their home, and Lindsay often thought about how Ryan's act of kindness had come full circle. It was a beautiful reminder that kindness begets kindness, and that even in the darkest of times, there is always light to be found. But Ryan's gesture didn't just affect the Sheely family. As news spread about Sunshine's arrival and the connection between Ryan and Cohen, people were once again reminded of the power of small, meaningful actions. Social media lit up with messages of hope and love, with people sharing stories of how they had been inspired to perform their own acts of kindness. Lindsay was often stopped in town by neighbors and even strangers who had seen the video or read about the story online. They would tell her how Cohen's hug had touched their hearts, how it had inspired them to reach out to someone in need, or how it had given them hope during difficult times. It was overwhelming at times, but it also filled Lindsay with a sense of pride. Her son, in his innocence and pure heart, had managed to make a difference in the lives of so many people. One day, Lindsay received an unexpected invitation. A local television station wanted to feature Cohen, Ryan, and Sunshine in a special segment about acts of kindness and how small gestures can make a big impact. At first, Lindsay was hesitant. She didn't want Cohen to be overwhelmed by all the attention. But after speaking with Ryan, they both agreed that it could be a great opportunity to spread a message of love and compassion. The day of the television taping, Cohen was excited but a little nervous. Lindsay reassured him that it would be just like playing with Sunshine at home. When the cameras started rolling, Cohen's natural charm shone through. He played with Sunshine on set, giggling and laughing as the puppy chased after a ball. Ryan sat beside Lindsay, watching with a soft smile on his face. During the interview, Ryan spoke candidly about his daughter Alyssa, about the grief he had experienced, and about how Cohen's hug had been a turning point for him. "That hug," he said, his voice cracking slightly, "was a reminder that there's still good in the world, even when everything feels like it's falling apart." The segment aired a week later, and the response was overwhelming. People from all over the country reached out to share their own stories of loss, grief, and the ways in which small acts of kindness had helped them heal. Ryan received hundreds of messages from strangers, offering their condolences and thanking him for sharing his story. Many of them mentioned how Cohen's simple hug had reminded them of the importance of human connection, of reaching out to others even when words seemed inadequate. For Lindsay, the experience was a powerful lesson in the ripple effect of kindness. She had never imagined that one small moment between her son and a delivery man could touch so many lives. But as the weeks went by, she realized that this was exactly what the world needed. More moments of connection, more reminders that even in our darkest moments, we are never truly alone. As Cohen grew older, Lindsay often told him the story of the night he hugged the pizza man. She would show him the video and remind him of how that simple act of love had changed someone's life. And though Cohen didn't fully understand it at first, he always smiled and said, "I'm glad I made Mr. Ryan happy." And that was the beauty of it all. Cohen didn't need to understand the magnitude of what he had done. He just needed to keep being the kind, loving boy that he was, because in the end, it was the purity of his heart, the simplicity of his actions, that had made all the difference. Years later, when Cohen was old enough to truly understand, Lindsay sat down with him and told him the full story about Ryan's loss, about Alyssa, and about how his hug had brought light into a stranger's life. Cohen listened quietly, his eyes wide with wonder. "Wow," he said softly when Lindsay finished the story. "I didn't know a hug could do all that." Lindsay smiled and hugged him tightly. "It can, sweetie. Never underestimate the power of kindness. You never know who might need it. And as Cohen hugged his mom back, he understood. Kindness wasn't just about grand gestures or big moments. It was about the little things, the simple acts of love and connection that had the power to change the world, one person at a time.